Race day. Here I am, alone in the seat of my high-powered, expertly tuned racing machine, confident in my skills and... Shit, here we go. Hello everybody, welcome to round 1 of eliminations for Mountain Motor Pro stock from Straight Line Media Raceway. Despite what I tell myself while sitting in the staging lanes alone in my delusions, I'd be lying if I said I was prepared for this as I would have liked to be. With my expertly tuned racing machine behaving rather amateurish, I was anything but confident. But before we do this, let's go back to the beginning and I'll tell you what we're all doing and how we got here. This is Bounty Drag Racing, a brand new online multiplayer drag racing game that attempts to give drag racers and drag racing fans a realistic and in-depth racing experience. It's a one-man creation as far as I'm aware, and while it doesn't have the shiny polish and graphics of something like an NHRA Speed for All or as dynamic a physics model as BeamNG.Drive, it's still very good for what it is. It's currently early access and for PC only, and you can get it for free on Steam as of this video, with the game set to go on sale with a full release very soon. There is no single player mode, there are no AI to race, but you are free to set up your own lobby if you like, or join someone else's. And in my opinion, this is what this game does better than the other 2 games I mentioned. That brings us here, to Straight Line Media Raceway, for a little pickup Mountain Motor Pro stock action in the first round of qualifying. I'd seen and made a handful of runs in the half hour or so I had spent in this room testing, and the room host called the staging lanes closed to begin Q1. I of course went immediately into the pits and into the tuning screen, where instead of saving the progress I had made so far, I loaded in an old set and had to remember everything I had fixed over the last dozen runs or so. The closest thing to a driving aid you'll find here is something called burnout mode. All the cars in this game tend to behave a little differently during the burnout, and it does take some practice to get it right, which I did not pull off here. We had an even 8 cars for this race. The quickest runs I was seeing in testing was in the 6.3 second range, with most of the rest of the people running 6.5s to 6.8. I had managed to run a best at 6.63 at this point, so while I knew there was little hope in winning this event, maybe I could at least put up a decent race for someone. Well, obviously that could have gone better, and I believe the shitty burnout was more of a symptom of a sluggish car and shitty car setup. For a guy who's been building a channel around setting up and racing cars, this was just an awesome start. As I go about making some much needed changes to the car before the next qualifying attempt, you can have a look at some of the tuning options available for each car. I can see this being a bit overwhelming if you're coming into it having only played games with ready-to-race vehicles and competitive default setups. There's a fairly decent number of classes you can race in Bounty Drag Racing that include a top alcohol funny car and dragster, pro modifieds with all the power combinations you could want available, extreme imports, import modifieds, top dragsters, a couple street outlaw style door slammers, and even a few choices for sand drag vehicles. And of course, the Mountain Motor Pro stocks we're racing today. Unfortunately, as you can also see at the top of the tuning menu, there are only a handful of default setups for 4 of these classes, and while they will get you onto and down a racetrack, you're going to need to put some time into it to get the most out of each car. For all the other classes, you'll have to rely on your own knowledge and wits. Yep, I'm screwed. With some tweaks made to the car, I spawned into the staging lanes and watched the pair ahead of me make their second qualifying attempt. In this game, you start from the pits or the staging lanes, and it's up to you to make your way to the burnout box when you're making your runs. There's no hand-holding being done here. This is an open-world racetrack with functioning timing equipment. It's up to us, the racers, to behave accordingly and follow the host's instructions when it comes to a race like this. With another reminder on the scoreboards of just how slow I am, it was time to bring it into the burnout box for attempt number 2. While this game gives you a few choices of driving cams, I found that in some cars, some of them make it very difficult to see the Christmas tree from one lane or the other, and I haven't been able to figure out how to switch views once I've left the pits. I would normally never use a roof cam like this in any other game, but I wasn't entirely sure which lane I would be in, and I hadn't run in the right lane enough in this car yet to know how well I could see from the one cockpit cam in this car that's not way too low to see much of anything at all. If adjustable seat positions were added to this game, it'd be very much appreciated by many, I would think. And I went out and made nearly the exact same shitty run as the first attempt. How encouraging. And to top that off, the next pair out reminded me again of how slow I am here. Normally these cars run well over 200 miles per hour. My two passes hit 186 and 183 miles per hour. So back to the tuning screen. Since it didn't feel as if it was spinning the tires or overpowering the track in any way at all, I made some clutch adjustments to hopefully not slip so much and actually put some power down on the track, and head to the staging lanes to watch some of the action while I waited my final qualifying attempt. In this attempt I would be first to the burnout box and decided to try the right hand lane. I don't think there was any difference between the two, I just wanted to make sure I would be able to see the tree from this side, since I also decided that not having a shift light available from the roof cam, I would be better off probably going back to the cockpit cam. That's how a burnout should go. It was pretty apparent even from that the car was starting to wake up a bit. Thankfully I was able to see enough of the Christmas tree from this view to be able to stage properly and everything, but you can see how close it is to being obstructed if the car were staged a little bit more to one side of the groove or the other. Oh, it's a pig off the line. It goes through the gears nicely, and I put up a 6.702 at 200 miles per hour. That's exactly the direction I needed to go with this. So, it was back to the pits. Now, the chances of me turning this into a 6.3 second race car based off that last pass with just a few lucky clicks of the mouse are very, very slim. It's far more likely that throwing shit against a wall is more likely to turn this back into a 7-second race car than making shit stick. So I make some minor gear adjustments and have a look at the data logger to see if there's anything to be learned. I'd be lying if I said I understood it all, but I do know that the red line is the engine's RPM during that last pass, and from looking at this, the car spent an awful long time just getting through first gear. So I made a few more transmission tweaks and hit the lanes to watch the last of final qualifying. If you're unfamiliar with Mountain Motor Pro stocks, these are much like their NHRA cousins, with the major difference being engine size. While current day NHRA Pro stocks are limited to 500 cubic inches and use electronic fuel injection, Mountain Motor Pro stocks have engines in the mid 800 cubic inch range and run either carburetors or electronic fuel injection. This class was born in the mid-1980s when the International Hot Rod Association, IHRA, more or less decided they wanted bragging rights to the quickest and fastest pro stock cars in professional drag racing. In the early years they allowed weight breaks to the lesser 500-inch NHRA style cars, but eventually that went away and this became a thing of its own. The American Drag Racing League, ADRL, brought them to the 8th mile as Extreme Pro Stock for 2009, and then just a couple years later, it would be dropped as a class by the IHRA as it made a drastic change in direction toward its seemingly inevitable demise. Today they still run on the 8th mile in the XDRL, the Extreme Drag Racing League, and appear at a handful of NHRA national events as an exhibition class where there are still a few that run the full quarter mile on one of these. If you're enjoying today's action, hitting that thumbs up will tell YouTube that this is some good shit that people might want to see. And if you're into this, and if you're still here, you probably are, please think about subscribing to the channel for more. If you guys like this, and it does well, I'd certainly love to bring you more of it. And I promise, Even if I don't get faster behind the wheel, I'll at least get better at working these camera angles. Anyway, here we go with round 1 of eliminations. In the left-hand lane, driving the black Chevy Cobalt is, I'm guessing, the number 1 qualifier and room host, Daddy Motor Power. He'll be alongside the unpainted entry driven by NHRA 101. Daddy Motor is one racer here that I know can run in the 6.3 second range. It wasn't a 630, but a 6.62 199 mile per hour pass is good enough to take out the burning Cobalt of NHRA 101. Coming out next, in the left-hand lane, driving the black car is Nova. In the right-hand lane, driving the blue car is Soldier Boy. You may have noticed that everybody out here is driving a Chevy Cobalt, and that's because it's the only pro stock model in the game, at least for the moment. Drivers are ready. A decent side-by-side drag race. Soldier Boy taking it with a 6.658 at 200 miles per hour to a losing 6.80. And that brings us back here. My turn. I'd be taking as someone called Straight Line Media. Since I'm new at this, I don't really know any of the competitors here, but I did make my first qualifying pass beside this car, and while slightly faster than me, it was still a 7-second pass like mine. So, as long as the changes I made back in the pits before this round don't hurt my performance, and if I at least run close to my last pass, I had hoped I could put up a race, if not sneak out a win light here. Well, that's not what you want to see. Straight Line kicking my ass on every end of that with a 6.550 to my 6.738 at 198. I guess it could have been worse. Well, with my race done, I got to sit back and take in the rest of the event. The last pair out in round 1 had Hev H on the far side of the track, taking on C-Tuned 804. This is a great looking race. At the other end, Hev H takes the win 6.670 to a losing 6.714. They weren't super fast, but it was a good race regardless. Okay, on to the semifinals and the first pair out. If you based it on the opening round, this one could be tight. In the blue car we have Soldier Boy, fresh off a decent enough 6.658 200 mile per hour run. And in the other lane, driving the black car is room host Daddy Motor Power, who, while capable of 6.3s, only put down a 6.621 in the opening round. So this could be tight, or it could be a blowout. It looks like the latter. Daddy Motor laying down a 6.367 at 204 miles per hour to go to the finals. Coming to the line hoping to face him in that final round is our other 2 semifinalists. In the left-hand lane, driving the blue car is Hev H. In the right-hand lane, driving the black car, the very one that put my piece of junk on the trailer in round 1, is Straight Line Media. Hev H ran a 6.670 last round, and Straight Line used a 6.550 to put me away. Let's see what happens here. Another excellent drag race. At the finish line, it's Hev H with a 6.656 at 203, beating a 6.743 at 196 by Straight Line. That takes us to the final round. Hev H in the blue car, taking on the 6.3 second beast driven by Daddy Motor Power. I have to say, even though I didn't perform nearly as well as I would have liked, it had been a long time since I had done anything like this, and I had a really good time. I had only entered this room planning to get some test hits in, and this whole race that we've been watching here doesn't seem like it was anything planned in advance, and it's more the result of what happens when a bunch of racers are just hanging out and want to find out who built the baddest hot rod. I can't thank KOD Games enough for building us a playground to do it. This has been sorely missed for a long time, and I hope it's appreciated and does well. Anyway, we have one last thing to settle here. Hev H far lane, Daddy Motor Power near lane. MH goes big time red, and Daddy motors to the low ET and top speed of the event, laying the smack down, giving us all something to work on. Thank you all very much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this. See you next time.